There is a problem. There is a problem with how we have been talking about Islam in popular discourse. It's not a problem of being offensive, politically incorrect, or being uninformed about Islam and its tenets. And it's not even a problem of viewing Islam through a certain political position. The problem is with the framework of how we conduct discussions on the subject, which is basically composed of two very simplistic sides. The first one is where we draw a straight line between Islam and tyranny. This position is commonly seen among people who are not afraid to voice their dislike of Islam, and the more vocal ones in this group are the ones who take their criticism to the next level, and these people are normally referred to as Islamophobes. This is the point of view that cites evidence of ideas like jihad, political Islam, Sharia law, as an indication of there being something innate to Islamic thought that gives rise to violence. At the very edges of this view, we see Islam as the biggest threat to modern civilization itself. The second side is where we take less of a hard line and we tend to isolate the problematic aspects to the fringes and appeal to the richness of what the Islamic culture and historical contributions have to offer. From this perspective, Islam is a complex, multifaceted ideology that isn't much different from other Abrahamic faiths, and that has its share of bad apples as well. From this point of view, the fact that an overwhelming majority of Muslims do not practice the troublesome ideas criticized by the previous group is evidence that whatever problematic elements lay dormant in Islamic thought, they are not a cause for concern. The line between practice Islam and tyranny is not so clear from this perspective. While this group doesn't exactly shy away from talking about the problematic elements of Islam, it doesn't uniquely single out Islam as a major ideological threat to modernity. This rhetoric in its present form arguably started in the early 2000s, when there was an increase in terrorism by self-proclaimed Islamic groups. There has been much written, discussed, and debate about it to find the link between religious ideology and terror. After much of this public discussion, we seemingly did get some answers, but for all the wrong questions. Or at least for questions that illuminate a very low resolution view of the issue at hand, and that do not entirely get to the bottom of this riddle. Here's what we have been asking traditionally. Does Islam promote terrorism? Why do a disproportionately large minority Muslim groups engage in terrorism? What is the link between Islam and tyranny? Why is there little freedom in Muslim majority countries? Why do Muslims want to impose Sharia law? To a lot of Muslim viewers, these questions will sound highly illogical and in some cases downright offensive. From their point of view, the answer to each question will inevitably reveal political instability, poverty, or historical grievances as the root cause. And arguably there is a case to be made for that. To the rest who have paid attention to the popular discourse on Islam in the past decade or so, these are the questions that need to be answered because it seems like there is violence arising out of Islamic communities, even in absence of political instability, poverty, and historical grievances. This video is not a commentary or discussion on the nature of the problem itself. There's already plenty of literature, discussion, and YouTube videos that can answer some of these. There are actually plenty of videos where you'll find so-and-so debunking or calmly destroying or educating an Islamic apologist or an Islamophobe. Take your pick. The purpose here is to address the way we talk about radical Islam or militant Islam, or whatever iteration of words you want to use to define groups causing violence in the name of Allah. The reason for fixing the framework of dialogue at this point in history is that there seems to be an unspoken agreement in the West that there definitely is something wrong with either Islam or Muslims. Depending on which of the first two groups you belong to, there definitely is something there that requires fixing. It may be the case you don't think there is something uniquely wrong with Islam, but there definitely is something there that is keeping Muslim civilizations from being at the frontier of social development, freedom, and political stability. If there ever is hope for progress on the front of reforming Islam or how it is practiced, we need to formulate better questions when discussing this subject. And that is the crux of the problem, that we've been asking all the wrong questions about this subject, which has given us either at best a very low resolution diagnosis of the real problem with Islam, and at worst, an agreement that it's a faith steeped in antiquity and outdated ideas. What are the right questions? Let us begin with what aren't the right questions. It is not precise enough to ask whether Islam promotes terrorism. Islam is a source of meaning, knowledge, and tradition that at its core is a reminder of the existence of a transcendent being who gives life and provides guidance on conducting yourself in the world, the transience of life, and the reality of an afterlife. The way the questions about Islam's link to terror are phrased or are addressed doesn't tie together the specifics that gives rise to tyranny and violence from the core tenets. There have been discussions where certain doctrines have been brought to light as evidence for creating this link, and those claims have been promptly been dismissed as the followings of a fringe, selectively interpreting minority of extremists. The situation as of today is that we're still talking past each other and we have not found any common ground, let alone a common premise to construct a framework of dialogue around. My biggest worry is that present and future policy decisions will be based on this deeply flawed framework of dialogue and will repeat the same mistakes over and over again. We need to fix this framework of discourse so we can at least have a chance of making a bridge. Here is a potential solution for a framework of dialogue. Looking at the bigger picture of where we are, perhaps the main contentions can be distilled into these key questions. What is the relationship between Islam and the idea of a state? What are the political ambitions of Islam, if any, according to classical Islamic thought? It seems like the biggest reservation in the West about Islam is the propensity of violence across time and places. Political ambitions codified through use of Quran and Hadith can therefore be grounds on which any discussion has to be conducted. This topic deserves a whole video for itself, but in summary, the 20th century was a particularly turbulent era for most of the Muslim world, as the grip and authority of colonial powers waned. In this historical context emerged certain political ideologies through the work of Islamic scholars who codified the political ambitions of Islam. I think this entire body of work, which is the emergence of a political narrative, can be a solid framework around which we can have a productive dialogue. In a sense, these are some of the ideas that emerged out of this era by certain scholars. There are certain sins such as apostasy and polytheism, which can also be considered to be crimes against God. An Islamic government is a state in which sovereignty belongs to God. Therefore, an Islamic government shall punish a citizen who has committed these crimes against God. Religion was sent down by God to wipe out falsehood. Therefore, the world comprises of the land of falsehood, where Islam has not reached yet, and the land of Islam, where Islam is dominant. The goal of an Islamic government is to continue this mission and ensure that falsehood is without power. The followers of other beliefs, however, are not the target here, just the powers of their governments. The means of wiping out falsehood will be jihad, establishment of a caliphate or a global union of Islamic states. The Islamic government will be responsible for enforcing Islamic law involving all areas of life, including but not limited to dress, attire, public eating etiquette, financial system, taxation, etc. These are 4 or 5 ideas that need to be discussed, examined, dissected, analyzed, and whatever else you might do to reveal a path forward for the political ambitions of Islam. The progress, political stability, and growth in Islamic nations and state in the past 50 years has made it self-evident that whatever the scholar-led society or governments have created, the results have been anything but a stable, developing, free, and peaceful society. Any future bridge we build between Muslims and the West will have to be built over these ideas.